When you have come close to death, nothing else matters, because we are here in a soul's journey and we come here to learn lessons. So if you focus on achieving success, material success, you're simply wasting your time. So if you don't like your life, and you don't like the world, and you don't like your relationships, and you don't like yourself, just question your mind. Because it's the mind interpreting and making up this whole movie that is so harmful for yourself and for others. We exist as a part of the universal consciousness. That's the divine spark in all of us. We don't need to achieve what we consider are material great things here in this world, because we are. Universal consciousness is going through all of what each sentient being has a spark of that consciousness.
There goes a sight from my soul.
Oh, this week's podcast is not for the faint of heart. It is with Monica Esgueva, and she goes all the way in on the journey towards enlightenment. She basically calls us out. She says, hey, we've been on this achiever trajectory for long enough, and there is a collective global shift happening now, not just on the planet, but universally. We are shifting into higher and higher levels of consciousness, and that's why the old way doesn't work anymore. And it's not about letting go of your achiever. We talk about integration on a really deep level in this podcast. She has written a book called The 7 Levels of Wisdom, and we dive deep into unpacking the differences between knowledge and wisdom, how to actually cultivate inner peace, how to cultivate your own benevolence. You're going to absolutely love this conversation. One of the key things, guys, as we're here, I wanted to just humbly ask you to tune in, and if you can find it within your heart, to please hit subscribe and that bell notification icon. Basically, your subscription enables everything around here. You'll notice recently we got over 10,000 subscribers, and we moved into going from doing 1 podcast a week here on YouTube to 2 podcasts a week. Now, as we continue to grow, my commitment to you is, as this channel grows, as the subscriptions grow, as the views grow, only greater and greater quality, more and more guests will feature. And being truthful with you, when we get to the 100,000 subscriber mark, my ambition is to take this channel to 3 episodes a week. So, we're definitely just getting started in many ways, touchwood, and it is your subscription that enables, that empowers everything that we're doing here. If you've got anything, any thoughts, any questions that emerge, please feel free to ask them in the comment section below. I love responding to you guys in there, and just the conversation that's created in the comment section below is just really fun and really hearty. So appreciate you all for that as well. So if you haven't already, take a moment, please hit subscribe, and we'll be eternally grateful. Thank you so much for your blessings. Welcome back to the Inspired Evolution, and we have with us Inspiring Evolution today, Monica Esgueva. Monica, how are you there?
I love your enthusiasm.
Touch wood. That means a lot to me coming from you. For those that are tuning into Monica, she's an author, she's a teacher, transformational coach, she's a spiritual guide. Her work touches people profoundly. She appeals to people from many different backgrounds. She is supporting people on a path of evolution of consciousness. That sounds very familiar to what we're up to and used to around here, but humbly, from my perspective, I'm just in awe. She's written 9 books, published in Spain, Latin America. They have a bestseller called Mindfulness in there. And this year she's releasing her first book in English called The 7 Levels of Wisdom. And I'm really excited to dive deeper into these levels of wisdom in today's conversation today. But I think tuning into your work, Monica, and you can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but there's this real dynamic between, I don't want to say a renaissance, but like bridging Eastern philosophy and thought into Western philosophy and thought, and just integrating the two for this practical Western mindset that we have, but also, there's a lot of harm that the psychology sort of requires, it feels, and you've stepped into the psycho-spiritual space, and you've studied with Tibetan Lamas, including the Dalai Lama. We share a teacher in the highly esteemed Eckhart Tolle. You've done TEDx talks. You were honored as the top 100 women leaders in Spain. There's so much goodness flowing in and around there. And I'm sure even that I have probably just scratched the surface in what you're up to in the world. But I wanted to, just start by, you've mentioned in your work that what really matters at the heart of everything that's going on in this experience of life is spiritual evolution. Now, I know I'm running out of the gate with this question, which is why is that the most important thing for an individual, our spiritual evolution? But I'm conscious that, we are robbed of all the context of all the other work that you do as well. So, but I'm going to stand by that question. So why is it so important, our spiritual evolution? And I guess the question is, how did you come to this awareness after everything that you've steeped yourself in over the last 15 plus years, that this is actually what's at the heart of the most important thing in life?
I think is the only thing that matters at the end of the day. When you have come close to death, and I'm not talking about my own death, but I have worked with a lot of people that were close to death, and I have seen many people dying. And then I study for many years with Tibetan Lamas, as you said, in Nepal and India, and I came to the conclusion that nothing else matters, because we are here in a soul's journey. We are here just for a very short period of time, and we come here to learn lessons. So if you focus on achieving success and material success, then you're simply wasting your time. It may not, it may be this view may not be shared by many people yet, but it doesn't make it less real and less of a truth. And what I have seen with Tibetan Lamas is that they have been studying the mind and the heart for decades, for centuries. And we only have like 100 years of studying the mind in psychology and psychiatry. So they have a lot of things to teach us. And one of them is, okay, the maximum goal that we should all have is enlightenment. And that means that you finish all your lessons here, so you can be of maximum benefit here if you decide to incarnate to teach, or you can go on to the next stage. So it's really up to us. This is the free will that we all have. We can decide to just dedicate our time to have more and more possessions, more followers, better job, finding the right person, all those things that people do. And then at the end of the day, the end of your life, when you do the revision of your life, after you leave the body, you realize that you wasted your time. This is a very precious possibility and opportunity to do something really useful with your life. And I can tell you that when you revise your life, you've reviewed everything you have done, you don't take anything with you. You don't take your status, you don't take your possessions, you don't take your friends, you don't take your partner, your children, you don't take anything. You just take the wisdom that you acquired and the kindness that you gave. So keeping that in mind is a no-brainer. What should I do my life? Well, put your focus on evolving, on progressing, because this is the only thing that you're going to take away with you.
Thank you so much. I love the way you've described that. And I love that it's not just wisdom. Like, I think it sounds really weird to say a sentence. It's not just wisdom, but also the highlighting the importance of calmness as well. Because I often find in my own journey that that's a really low-hanging fruit. It's a really easy way to identify where I've actually still got work left to do. When I'm unable to find naturally flowing kindness towards the other, it's like, I get triggered and it's like, oh, that was a mess. And, it's interesting having a podcast called The Inspired Evolution, because my mother actually is really good at calling me out. She'll be like, that's not very inspired evolution. And I'm like, yes, indeed. I recognize that. Wow, I was triggered there, and I've actually said, I would like to try and rework through that. And so I think kindness is also a really powerful, lens that holds space for us to be able to recognize what work we've got to do. And let's get to that. But I guess one of the questions I often find myself asking, and just given the nature of your work, I'm excited to ask this today to see where we go with this, because you've espoused that, through the Tibetan teachings, that enlightenment is this key goal to achieve. And it's the most important thing that we can do with our lifetime. Now, I'm conscious that as soon as you say that to me as an individual, my mind automatically starts to sort of want to figure out the problem of being unenlightened. And it now is like another thing that my mind is trying to problem solve. It's trying to crunch. And having done this work for long enough now, I recognize that enlightenment, one of my favorite quotes is, we're running after enlightenment and we're running forwards, but it's actually behind you. Slow down, just take it easier. And in that, I guess the curiosity point that I'd like to discuss with you is this nature of the way I look at enlightenment is it's this element of somehow going beyond the mind a little bit, the suffering that is caused by the mind. We transition through and from into another space, in another level of consciousness. However, in order to do that, it seems that we have to utilize and work with the mind. So it's this really interesting rub, is it not, that we have to sort of work with a tool to transcend the tool? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Yeah.
Right. I think it's a little bit of a catch-22, right?
Yes.
Well, we it's not easy, and I know that a lot of people talk about Earth as a school, right? And I tend to call it a boot camp, because I think this is not a school. This is a boot camp. We are here to get ready for much higher evolution. And this is difficult. This is very challenging. You incarnate in a body, and the moment you do that, you forget about who you really are, what you came here for, who you were before, what your wisdom is, and everything else. So it's very difficult, and here you have to deal with people that are at a very low level of consciousness as well. The majority of people are not in a very high state of consciousness. So that makes the whole thing very, very difficult. And that means that, yes, we have a mind that is very useful for certain things, for problem solving, as you were talking about before, for rationalize things, analyze things. But then you realize that to be able to get enlightened, the rational mind is not very useful, because you have to go through it. You have to cut through all the inner chatter. And when you let your rational mind be active, then you are always analyzing. And analysis is not the door to enlightenment. So, yes, you have to work with what you have, which is a rational mind. And at the same time, you need to dissolve the ego, which is part of the personality and the rational mind. So it's really a paradox out there. And at the same time, this is the game. These are the rules. This is the game. And this is what we have to play with. That's why it makes it so challenging. It's difficult. I'm not saying, I don't think it's easy. I remember that the Dalai Lama used to tell us it takes eons of time. That means a lot of lifetimes, to get there. But it's true that we are at a moment in global evolution, and I'm not even talking about the Earth. I'm talking about the whole galaxy and universe where we are living, where everything is changing. The whole universe is upgrading, and we are going towards a higher vibration, higher dimension. So things are really accelerated right now. So the opportunities are higher, but also the challenges are very difficult right now. So this is the paradox of duality. The bigger the challenge, the bigger the opportunity for your growth. And at the same time, you also have the danger of falling down, and it takes time until you get up again.
In what you're describing, there's a real underlying current of the change that's coming, that's currently underway. And underneath that, it seems, as you just described, this nature of challenge and how, in the school of life, it's a necessary ingredient for evolution and transformation. And in the Buddhist philosophy, they have this idea of dukkha and, how it's inescapable. Can you describe suffering as a necessary ingredient for evolution? Because part of me, and maybe this is the spiritually immature version of it, Touchwood, would like to just say, oh, why can't I just evolve through joy and peace and happiness all the time? Right. So I'd love to ask you that question. Yeah.
Well, I think that will come eventually, but not on this earth in 3D, third dimension. In third dimension, the rule of the game is that things are difficult, challenging, and that's what we have to accept. We accepted to come here and play by the rules. So these are the rules here. But I would say dukkha, yes, it is translated as suffering in general, but I think it has to do more with dissatisfaction. And I make a difference between pain and suffering. And I think because we don't accept that life here is inherently painful, and it has a lot of pain and hurt, and you get wounded and on all that, because we don't accept that as something necessary, then we create a lot of suffering. So I would like to start by making the difference very clear for our audience, your audience, which is, okay, pain is inescapable. We have a body and the body gets sick. That's it. Sooner or later, you will get sick or you will get hurt. And that's it. You have to accept it. Sometimes we create relationships and relationships get broken. The person goes away, or you divorce, or the person dies, whatever. That's also a fact of life, and we have to accept it. And sometimes you have dreams, you have projects, and those projects do not become a reality. It hurts, and it's normal that it hurts because you got involved in it. So that's the part that we must accept. Otherwise, we are going to suffer a lot. But then suffering is up to us. It's something that we can choose to go through or not. And how can we avoid it? Well, even when something painful happens in your life, even if it is a trauma or something that was really tough, it happened once. How many times you repeat that in your mind? That is suffering. And also the incapability or inability to accept pain is what brings suffering, as I was saying. But I will give you an example. If you don't accept that life is pure change, then you suffer, because you don't accept the impermanence of life, of things in 3D, in this dual world, are impermanent by its own nature. So nothing lasts forever. And that lack of acceptance of the nature of life here brings a lot of suffering, because when something is good for us, or we like it, or we enjoy it, it's like, please don't ever change. But it's bound to change, and it's bound to finish and start something else, right? So it is our mind, our lack of training, what brings us suffering. It is completely unnecessary. But if you want to suffer, okay, be my guest.
Because that was going to be one of my questions today. Thank you so much for eliciting the difference between pain and suffering and this sort of, I don't want to say silver bullet, but this, this hallowed ground, this sacred space of acceptance that is available to us. But in there, it's, again, the neuroses of the mind, and just that it seems like exactly how you described, something will happen to us on one occasion and we will struggle with that interaction in that moment. And we carry these interactions or these painful moments and repeat them and repeat the trauma, big T trauma, little t trauma, however you want to look at it, in our psyche, and we meander again and again and again. And watching that neuroses, it's like, if the mind is this tool that is, meant to support me to some degree towards my enlightenment, and in doing this to me, like, why is it, and I know this is probably a silly question, but to some degree, why is the mind so in its own way? Like, why is it so hard for us to let go of these things? And why is it not intuitive and natural and flowy for us to let go of things?
Well, because the mind is associated to the ego. So as long as the ego is in charge, we are bound to suffer and be frustrated, dissatisfied, and have a lot of anger and all the negative emotions. So in a way, I think maybe I can explain in a way that people can understand it and it makes sense. Our mind is like, just think about when you go to watch a movie, okay, and you see all the pictures and everything that is happening, and you get so much into it that you believe is real, and then you are swept by emotions, and you don't realize it's not real, but you believe you are in the movie and you're part of it. It's the same thing with the mind. There's not one single reality. There are 8 billions of realities depending on the mind of each person. So the mind, if it is not trained, then it runs wild, and it brings up so many unhealed wounds and anger and jealousy and greed, all those things that the ego is an expert in, and then you get dragged by it. So here, when those things happen, you have to realize that this is a make-up movie in your mind. It has nothing to do with reality. So if you don't like your life, and you don't like the world, and you don't like your relationships, and you don't like yourself, just question your mind. Because it's the mind interpreting and making up this whole movie that is so harmful for yourself and for others. So you want a different life, different relationships, and a different relationship with yourself, change the movie. And then everything else would change.
I love that. And I can literally see, as you're describing, like the mind almost as this projector machine that is at the cinemas, and it's literally displaying a certain type of movie. And like you said, if you want it to change, feed it something different. Hey, you're Inspired Tribe. I want to take a quick sec. I wanted to share something today with you that is really dear to my heart. And it's actually what keeps the entire ecosystem around the Inspired Evolution thriving, my one-on-one coaching. So it's basically coaching that helps you live a spiritually aligned life. I coach people from all different types of walks of life. That these people are leaders and they're looking to have an incredible spiritual impact in the lives that they're leading for themselves, and then also lead in alignment to their values. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. Here's a few people that have also transformed through my coaching, and here's what they have to say.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines.
He's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing.
Then my corporate banking job wasn't really doing it.
You feel like you're not making progress towards your goals.
And Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
I'm more in control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me be easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate, because you won't be disappointed.
As you guys can see, there's a lot of people all over the world from all these different corners experiencing incredible transformations. I don't think, if I can say humbly myself, that there is anything quite like this somewhere else online. Most people that, have channels that, grow and grow and grow don't really focus on one-to-one offerings. I have just found that it is the most profound space where you can bring yourself in a private container and really just share what's going on for yourself. And if you want to book in for that call with me, touch base, it's www.amrit.coach/life. That's www.amrit.coach/life. There is a link in the show notes below to book in that call. And yeah, if you want to take your journey further, if you want to dive in deeper, and you really want to live a spiritually aligned life, if it's for you, please do check it out. And without too much further ado, once again, for your spirit, for yourself, today's podcast. And knowing lies the heart of some of the questions that I wanted to move in today, which is, walking with the mind, because we worked with a lot of different people from a lot of different demographics. We're talking some, really globally recognized organizations, to leading personal summits and retreats, so in and around that, I guess, how do we start to work with healing in the mind? I guess we've discussed some of the stuff that, the challenge that the mind has. How do you invite people into starting a journey to working with their mind, and how do we start to heal from some of these challenges that the mind has?
I think the first and foremost is mindfulness. You have to become aware of your thoughts, of your speech and your actions. Most people live lives as sleepwalkers. They just follow whatever the so-called expert tells you to do, or follow whatever your family believes, or follow whatever society or whoever is the new celebrity or YouTuber or whatever would tell you to do. And they just follow, they comply. To be able to be a master of your mind, it all starts with awareness. And you have to be very present and in inner silence. If your mind is always chatting, then you cannot even hear your intuitions. The voice of your inner guidance is so subtle that you cannot hear it. And then you just follow the rules. And the rules may be good for some people, but maybe they're not good for you. The greatest expert in your mind and in your life and in your body is yourself. Why do we end up listening to all these people when we have the inner guidance? And most of these people don't even want our good. They just want to use us, to manipulate us. So to be able to be a master of your life, you need to be a master of your mind. And to be able to be a master of your mind, it all starts with awareness. To be present in this moment, whatever you are doing or not doing, but just be here now, instead of just ruminating things from the past that didn't work out well, or that were wonderful, but they are not here anymore, or just fearing things that will come and are going to be so possibly damaging for you, but you have no idea because we don't know what the future will bring. And then who is here to live life and to deal with whatever is coming up here and to enjoy it? There's no one here. The mind is somewhere else.
And I think I love that. The way to change your life, change your mind, and then start to become inviting in more and more awareness. It does seem really, and maybe I'm wrong, that in today's society, more often than not, it is becoming harder and harder to hold a space of presence for one's self. Do you agree to that?
Yes, I do agree. I think technology is absorbing every single minute that we have. And then we think that we need to be continuously talking to people or absorbing information, useless information, by the way, but still, and then wasting our
except for this
precious
podcast.
time. Exactly.
Sorry, I like to joke. Pardon me.
That's perfect. And the other thing is, like, we have been brainwashed into thinking that contemplating and being in silence is a waste of time. We should be productive. We are not human beings, we are human doers. Where does it come from? We are human beings, but we are hardly ever being. We are always doing something, and we feel so guilty when we are not doing and producing and thinking that we are getting closer to our goals. Yeah, but where are those goals for if I don't have the time to enjoy them? What's the point?
Yeah, I find that so potent when you describe it that way, because even just the concept of how much of our self-worth is attached to what we do, and then again the ego and the neurosis of the mind, and the ego consistently wanting to validate, to build up its self-worth, its self-esteem, and it's like, okay, if I do more and I do more and I do more, and it just consistently runs into this space of doing, and then eventually it's like, actually, can you find some sense of just value in being, existing, like you're here? It's pretty remarkable if you just slow down to accept it for a second. Sorry, you were going to say something here.
But it's absolutely true. We have been led to believe things that are going against ourselves, our best interest. And our best interest is to be right here, right now, enjoy life, whatever it brings. Sometimes it's very good, sometimes it's more difficult, but still there's always an opportunity for us in the situation. But our value is intrinsic to existence itself. We exist as a part of the universal consciousness. And that is so valuable in itself. That's the divine spark in all of us. We don't need to be leaders of anything or anyone. We don't need to achieve great things, or what we consider are material great things here in this world. We don't need to possess anything. We don't have to have a partner. We don't have to have a family. We don't have to do anything to be able to be and feel very valuable, because we are. Universal consciousness is going through all of what each sentient being has, a spark of that consciousness. And that is so important, so fundamental, because the source of everything, the universal consciousness, is not the same without you or without that other person in the street. Maybe he's a homeless. It doesn't matter. He's very valuable for all that is. And that is what makes you understand that our value doesn't come for what society puts on you or waits or expects from you. So your value comes from existing. And that's why every single being on this earth is valuable. It doesn't matter if it is a king or a beggar. It's the same. And we have built the whole society like a hierarchy of importance. We are all important. There's no superior or inferior. We are just equals in the eyes of God, because we are God.
I am reminded of your experience learning from the Dalai Lama. And maybe I'll start kind of what I'm referring to, and then you can take over and explain the experience a little bit with us. From what I've come to understand, you were there absorbing the teachings, learning from the teachings, and as you were speaking, but you were also having very interesting peak experiences when he was sharing and talking, and not always understanding what he was saying word for word, like verbatim. So can you describe that a little bit? Because for me, it reminded me of just how important it is to do the work, because there is obviously, what I'm saying, what you're saying, and what we're sharing today, but also we don't recognize the energy that we bring in touch with to the conversation in some ways, which is cultivated by our being in our day-to-day living. And, as we're talking about being, just being, and that's sort of what I was, please, you go.
Well, I think we give a lot of importance to the words, but I think it's much more important. I don't think it's not important. The words are important because this is our way to communicate with each other. But even more important is our energy, because it's our vibration that really matters. And that we cannot see or feel with our eyes or our senses yet. It will come at some point when we raise our vibration. But it doesn't mean that it's not there. We are all, everything is energy, and we are energy. So the most important thing is how high your vibration is. Where do you vibrate? Because you will attract that and you will emanate that. And what happened to me, that was the first time I received teachings from the Dalai Lama. That was many, many years ago. I think it was 2006. And that was my first peak experience or mystical experience or spiritual experience, whatever people tend to call it. And that was very surprising because I was not prepared for that. And it came out of the blue. He started doing an initiation, and for people that wanted to take the vows of bodhicitta. And bodhicitta is the being that commits himself to come and reincarnate again and again until all beings are liberated. So when I found out what it meant, I said, I'm not sure I'm willing to do that. And it's like, so I'm not going. Everybody was just taking the commitment so freely and so mindlessly, and I was like,
karmic, cleaned up crew for like not just for life, but for life upon life, for life of their life. Wow. Yes, it doesn't sound like a faint-hearted commitment to make. Sorry.
Right. So many people were doing it like it was nothing, and I said, okay, I'm not doing that. I'm not ready for that at that point. But it didn't really matter. So he was speaking and giving all these like words in Tibetan that I didn't understand a thing. It was all very complicated. And then, of course, it was translated. But even if it was translated, it was very alien to me at that time. It was like, okay, you imagine this God here on your head, and on top of him is this other God, and this the other deity. It was very complicated. So I was not really following it. But the amazing thing is every time he will speak, I will go into a peak experience where I just felt one with everything. I just felt that everything around me and in me was love, pure, unconditional love. And I will start crying. And I was in the middle of everybody, like, well, I don't know, hundreds of people. And I was like, oh my God, I'm just crying like a baby here. And then he will stop, and I will stop. The whole experience will stop. He will speak again, and the whole experience will just resume. And I didn't know what was going on with me. I was really, really surprised. And then with time, of course, I was able to integrate the experience, and those kind of experiences kept repeating in my life. And I understood that is part of the spiritual path at some point, that happens to a lot of people. And that is something that it builds up until one day that kind of experience will be your life, hopefully.
Is when you're saying you're crying, I think just to clarify for those, are tears of sadness or are tears of joy? Yeah, how are you? Yeah.
Oh, they were tears of bliss.
Yeah, I think it's quite quite profound. Even just knowing that that's possible to experience, and then learning, like you said, to use the word integrate. that into our being in our day-to-day living, and then learning to evolve our day-to-day being on a daily basis to, I guess, transcend into these higher levels of consciousness. One of my doing research for our podcast, and you put it this way, and I want to really ask you to unpack this, because I think this is supremely profound. You said we cannot transcend an ego that has not been healed first.
Yeah, I don't think this is very popular.
I like it. Yeah, because we're discussing energy, and there's the everyday stuff that's happening to us, and we're challenged by it, and we've been discussing those challenges, and we've talked about the place and the pain, and the difference between the pain and the suffering, and the pain that the ego is generating from the story. Well, can you describe what you mean by we cannot transcend an ego that has not been healed first? Because now it opens up this whole conversation around healing, and previously it was just understanding the difference between pain and suffering.
Mm-hmm. I think in my studies with Tibetan Lamas, I have discovered that they don't place much importance on that. For them, you don't need much healing. All you need is just to detach from it. It's something from the past, detach from it and move on. And because I am also a Westerner, and I think psychology or psychotherapy in general has its place, I do think that you need to heal first, and you need help with healing. Sometimes you cannot do it on your own, and that's why there are so many people that can help in many holistic ways nowadays. When you don't heal, you tend to put that under the rug, or it will, in a different way to explain is that it will just go into your shadow. It will become a blind point in your subconscious mind. And that means that you, instead of overcoming it, of healing and overcoming that obstacle or that, let's call it, problem from the past, what you do is just you overlook it. And then you are very tempted to do spiritual bypass. So instead of facing what you don't like and going through the pain again to be able to be on the other side, what you do is like you find ways to find excuses and justifications not to do it. And that becomes a drag in itself, a burden for your enlightenment, because you don't overcome something, you don't look into it, you don't tackle the problem, then it will become a burden that you will be carrying all the time. And then the ego may have the illusion that has become so advanced because it doesn't have any problem. And the only thing that you have become is unaware of yourself, of your mind, and all the things that you have been hiding in your subconscious mind. And that is not progressing in any way, on the contrary, you are stopped by that. You are stuck with it, whether you like it or not. I don't know if it makes sense.
It totally makes sense. And sorry, I'm smiling because I if that was not popular, I think what I'm about to ask next is going to polarize some people, but I think it's an important conversation to have, because we're discussing spiritual bypassing and basically avoiding the necessary lessons, like you said, the school of life that is here to teach us. And on some level, our soul touchwood chose these lessons as part of my belief system. And we will get into belief systems actually. But in there, one of the interesting pieces is also that you said, I'm avoiding asking the question, meditation can be a form of spiritual bypassing. What?
Yeah, I know. That's another unpopular one, right?
Can you unpack that for us, please, for a moment?
Right. Well, I have seen, since I have been teaching meditation and especially mindfulness to a lot of people, I have seen that some people use it as a spiritual bypass. So what I mean by that is sometimes you may have things that are unpleasant to deal with, basically, whether it is with yourself or with other people, or you have a difficult situation at work, or you have a difficult situation with your partner, or something with your children. There are so many possibilities. And instead of facing that challenging situation, what you do is you meditate. Okay, good. I meditate, I feel so much calmer. I feel so much centered that instead of dealing with it, I can go on like this forever. So that it's like, okay, meditation is done to be able to calm your mind and to go through the chatter so you see what it is on the other side. But it shouldn't, of course, everybody can do whatever they want, but it shouldn't be used to avoid facing difficult situations, because then you will not progress. You will get stuck again.
That is so profound because, yeah, I put my hand up. I have been guilty of, okay, this is not working. I need to take some moments to just sit, be with myself, take the time. And actually, as I go into myself, it's like, actually, my being's fine. That was just happening over there and I don't have to address it. But when you notice that, like, ooh, it could be a year later, it could be some time later, same thing rears its head again. And now, like, oh, I thought I'd worked through that. And I was like, no. You just worked in and around while that was happening. You worked on yourself, but you didn't work through that actual thing. And I think it's important to elicit, and I can appreciate why it's unpopular because as a meditation teacher, yeah.
And it's also a way to avoid change, It's like, okay, I feel uncomfortable with the situation, but comfortable enough not to do anything about it. Okay, so we would just prolong the situation. We just hold on to the situation forever. And it's like, no, you just sometimes you do need to address the situation and you need to do things. And it's not just, okay, let's live with it. Well, sometimes you have to, because it's out of your control. So when it is out of your control, you need to live with it. You need to accept it. But some things are under our control and we need to go into action. Meditation cannot be a justification for not doing anything in life. It's not about that, or not getting involved in daily life. Let's not put everything in the same basket. So that is a very confusing way and not a distorted way to look at the spiritual path and the tools that we can use, because then everything becomes very confused and I don't think it will lead to any progress.
So, Monica, in there, I think now we're really touching at the heart of, really where knowledge comes to its edge and wisdom starts to open up. Because, even in that, like, it's very difficult to know what is within our control and what is beyond our control in some instances. Being able to discern between the two, the mind can do somewhat of a job, but I have found oftentimes it is wrong. I have found in my experience. And I guess this sort of opens the door for wisdom, because that seems like one of those wisdom pieces, like, the wisdom to know what I can change and accept the things that I can't. And the key piece being the wisdom to know the difference between the two. And therein lies this real thing, like, what is the wisdom of what I can change? What is the wisdom of what I can't? And the actual wisdom of, like, okay, the tipping point of how do I discern between the two? And sort of using that as a segue, I guess, to some degree, as the launching point for the 7 Levels of Wisdom, the book that you recently wrote. Maybe you can describe wisdom and the 7 levels of wisdom. We can start to discuss what is in the forthcoming book and why levels of wisdom. Why you use that word?
Well, I think trying to answer your question, I think first of all we need to be very honest with ourselves. You know, there's no progress if you lie to yourself, and sometimes when there are things about our lives that we don't like, we prefer to just not look at it and lie to ourselves and say, okay, this is fine, everybody does it, you know, I need this to be able to get there. And then you become settling for less, you know, and doing things that are not, that you shouldn't be doing because it's not aligned with your highest good and the highest good of other people. So we have to be very honest also when it is unpleasant, and I think that is the beginning of it. And deep inside, that divine spark that we all have will tell us this is right and this is wrong, and this you should do it and this you shouldn't do it, and this is beneficial and this is detrimental for you and others. The only thing is we don't want to listen to that. But why? Because, you know, I just want to have a little more pleasure here, and I don't, you know, this is good for me, and this is a whim of my ego. Why not a little bit more of this and that? And the ego has this ability to get us into anything and justify anything. So
It's
knowing
really good
that,
at that, by the way, it's really good at
very
that.
good at that.
Yeah.
So that's why we have to be very honest. And it's like, okay, I know you're going to go that way, but it's not the right way. So, okay, let's come back here and let's listen to my guidance. What does it say? And it says, don't do it. It's not good for you. It may be very pleasurable in the short term. It may give you some sense of importance in the short term, but in the medium and long term, it's going to have really bad consequences. So don't do it. And that is like, okay, be very honest and listen to your inner guidance. I think that's the beginning of a path of wisdom. And then I wanted to talk in the book, The 7 Levels of Wisdom, I wanted to talk about certain things to be able to change the ultimate goal that is set for us in our society. The ultimate goal here is to be an achiever, to achieve success, material success, and show everybody how well you have done it. And look at the world right now. This is what being achievers and aiming at being all achievers has brought us. This is it. So I think this is the time in our history where we need to change this. And this needs a shift in consciousness. So it means that we also, when we do that shift individually and collectively, we understand that being an achiever cannot be the summit of human evolution. This is only part of the conventional tier where, you know, we just follow the rules. We just use our rational mind. We don't question our beliefs or the belief system, and we just follow whatever science says, and that's it. This is what we have. This is the world that we have. Is this what we want? Well, if we don't like what we are doing, the results we are getting, when we should change what we are doing. So I think it's important to know that there are 4 levels after being an achiever. Achiever is only the 3rd level of evolution for humanity, for human beings. There are 4 levels afterwards that every single human being needs to go through to be able to reach unity consciousness, or enlightenment, or ascension, whatever you want to use as a concept. So I wanted to show that to people so we know where we are honest with ourselves, and we see where we are and what we need to do to keep progressing. And there are more and more people open to this kind of teachings. They want to continue the progress, but they don't know how. And And I think it's also that I thought it was good. At least that was the information I got from higher ground, that it was good to bring that. So our ultimate goal is change collectively, so we can change our world, and we are ready for the shifting consciousness that is needed on this earth very soon.
Hey, your Inspired Tribe. I want to take a quick sec. I wanted to share something today with you that is really dear to my heart, and it's actually what keeps the entire ecosystem around the Inspired Evolution thriving, my one-on-one coaching. So it's basically coaching that helps you live a spiritually aligned life. I coach people from all different types of walks of life. That these people are leaders and they're looking to have an incredible spiritual impact in the lives that they're leading for themselves, and then also lead in alignment to their values. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. Here's a few people that have also transformed through my coaching, and here's what they have to say.
Amrit is a fantastic coach.
In a few sessions, he got to a depth that I'd only experienced before working with certain medicines. And
he's gone through a lot of the struggles that you're probably facing.
Then my corporate banking job wasn't really doing it.
You feel like you're not making progress towards your goals.
And Amrit's been a really strong, supportive figure in my journey.
I'm more in control of myself.
I'm kinder to myself.
I actually have that vision and a purpose.
I do feel like I'm a better version of myself already.
Amazing energy.
He was easy to talk to, which made me easy to trust him.
Working with Amrit at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and really I was bouncing out of bed.
Whenever I get off the calls with Amrit, best money we've ever spent.
I would not recommend him because I don't want everyone to know about him and then I won't be able to book him. If he gets too busy, I won't get my turn.
I would say absolutely.
There's no way you can work with Amrit for a period of time without being transformed.
So if you're considering him as a coach, do not hesitate, because you won't be disappointed.
As you guys can see, there's a lot of people all over the world from all these different corners experiencing incredible transformations. I don't think, if I can say humbly myself, that there is anything quite like this somewhere else online. Most people that, have channels that, grow and grow and grow don't really focus on one-to-one offerings. I have just found that it is the most profound space where you can bring yourself in a private container and really just share what's going on for yourself. And if you want to book in for that call with me, touch base, it's www.amrit.coach/life. That's www.amrit.coach/life. There is a link in the show notes below to book in that call. And yeah, if you want to take your journey further, if you want to dive in deeper, and you really want to live a spiritually aligned life, if it's for you, please do check it out. And without too much further ado, once again, for your spirit, for yourself, today's podcast. You mentioned levels, and maybe it's worth us discussing what are some of these levels beyond the achievement, because it does seem to be like it's had its moment in the sun, and I think oftentimes, even for those tuning in, it's probably worth us clarifying that, we're probably not demonizing achieving. It's a necessary path of our evolution. And as we're individually evolving beyond achievement, we're collectively evolving into the next phase, which is a really exciting time. But it is quite a step change, because everything leading into this moment was of a certain frequency, and then now to go from achievement towards flow and surrender, acceptance, and moving into the next phase is it's the tools that have gotten me here. You still need to retain those to some degree, but soften all the angular edges into the next space, right? So we're not here to demonize achievement, but at the same time, learning to go, okay, well done, you've done that now. And now the next thing admittedly, this is back to what we were describing before about the mind and, using the mind to get to enlightenment, because oh my God, it's easy when I make a joke of myself, because it's just, I know me, right? So it's like, now we've gotten to this point of like, okay, I can achieve, and I know that if I set a target and set a goal, I can achieve it. I just need to focus and empower and discipline, and bang, I can do it. And then it goes, okay, and the next stage of your evolution is to, and I will get you to explain the 4 levels. That's the question still. But the irony of, like, for myself was like, okay, cool. And the next phase is to trust more, accept more, more, be kind in your interactions, and surrender and flow. And it's like, okay, let's achieve that. And so trying to use the operating system that's gotten me here for achievement into unlocking the new things and going, oh, and that's exactly the bit that you need to work on, which is the part that's trying to achieve surrender, achieve kindness, achieve flow, soften. And it's like, oh man, this is not easy. It was just so much easier to set the discipline to be, sorry, I make a lot of the work, but it's the next levels from the space of achievement and the transition that we're going through, if you don't mind sharing that with us.
Right. I think you're completely right. This is not about demonizing anything. This is about embodying the previous levels. This is like a Russian doll. You have all the previous ones inside, and you just get the new one, embracing the previous ones. But it's like, okay, we're not going to stay there. It's like, okay, let's go to the next one. And the next one is becoming an individualist. An individualist is the person that starts questioning the system of beliefs and the matrix and everything, and starts realizing that he doesn't, or she doesn't, or they don't want to become part of it blindly. They start questioning the rules and they become independent. And a good example of it will be the hippies in the 60s. They started questioning everything, and those were becoming individualists. The next one will be the strategist, and this a lot of therapists and coaches are there, and this is the people that want to be the best version of themselves. They really place less importance on achieving things, on attaining goals, and more on becoming a more developed self, and bringing all the qualities and the talents and the gifts and the strengths out there to be able to use them, and starting to see that maybe there are things to be questioned in the rational mind, and maybe there is a super rational mind as well. And then it comes, the next one will be the alchemist. The alchemist starts having more and more peak experiences and starts to have one foot on the other side and one foot here. And it becomes very complex because it's able to have a lot of complexity in his mind and understand many things that are difficult for most people. And they feel very alone because they don't have many people they can share their ideas of the world and themselves and the mind and everything with. They don't have many people to share that with. So there is this thing of, I want to be on the other side, but I have to be here, and I don't know how to get there, and I want to be more there. So it's an uncomfortable position for them. And the last one is the unitive, which we could say that they are almost enlightened, if not enlightened yet. And these are people that are so in the present. They are able to understand that everything has its place, that everything is perfect, that you don't have to do anything to be loved. I will love you the way you are. It doesn't really matter what you do. And they are able to surrender to whatever is happening. It's the next step of acceptance. And they live in a constant flow. But of course, we are talking about 0.1% of the population. I'm being generous.
I'm being generous. Yeah, I was gonna say. And it's also thank you so much for sharing those. And I think even just a potent reminder at this point that as we share these levels, noticing that there is an achieving mind that then goes, oh, what's to achieve? And it's like, again, back to what I was saying before about learning to soften the experience of that ambition that's trying to like hungrily grab at the next thing, because there is this real interesting dance about just order, chaos, surrender, discipline. There's this real and like you said, even how you described the alchemist was quite quite profound, because you start, maybe I've had some peek, like just a peek into some of that space, because it's really weird that the dichotomies of being human is so, it's ridiculous on some levels, you know? It really is. It's like, on one hand, I'm completely creating my experience in every single moment. I'm completely empowered. And then on the other hand, I'm just a small molecule floating through this galaxy, which is, you know, like completely insignificant. Like nothing of what I do really matters at all. And it's, you know, and both are true at any given time. And as you start to sit with that, it's like the rational mind really starts to decompose and show its limitations. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's as you said, it's very paradoxical. So when you are in the ultimate position, you see, you know that there at some point you will be able to conciliate both, that you will be able to integrate the yin and yang, the shadow and the light, and you will be able to do that. But at that point, you can't do it. You just have glimpses of it, and you know that it's possible, and you know there is more than ego. You know that in some way we are all interconnected, and at some points and some moments of your life you can feel it, but then at some points it's gone. You cannot, and you don't know what to do to because you cannot force it. And then when you come at the unitive level, you don't have to do anything, because you know, you feel it, you witness this dance of life, and you become so thrilled with it. You know that you don't need to change a single thing, because everything is perfect and everything fits as it should fit. But of course, it takes all this long path to get there.
You know, and even as we're saying that, I noticed that it can be triggering for some people for us to even say it that way, because sometimes you say, hey, everything is exactly how it's meant to be. And, even like what we described earlier, the challenges are a necessary ingredient for the shaking up, the cracking open, the awakening. And, when we're in it, it's hard to hear it, especially from that achiever mindset,
because the ego, let me just add that the ego will never understand it. The ego will never accept it, because you cannot do it from the level of the mind. It can only be done from the soul level. And you know that from the soul level everything makes sense, and we have agreed to the experiences we are having now, because it is for our highest benefit as the soul, not as the ego. So that's why we resist many situations. We don't like them, because the ego will never accept that this has to happen for me to learn, and I have to have this accident, and I have to have this abuser in my life. Come on, this is not possible. So the ego will never understand it, and it's only by taking a higher level, a higher perspective, that you can accept it, because you know that you don't know, that you don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, and you can only get the pieces as you get to a higher level, and you progress. And even in one lifetime, there are many things that happen in your life at some point, and you can only understand when you look backwards. In hindsight, it makes sense, but it didn't make sense at the time that they were happening, right? Imagine when we get the soul's level and we see the whole thread of lifetimes, but we have the wisdom of not being in a body, and we see everything. And then it's like, of course. And now it's just an inner trust, an act of trusting that this is for the best. And of course, an act of humility, which we are not renowned for, human beings.
Let's discuss that a little bit, because my questions were going to be along the line from this point, how do we start to work through the levels? Because as I've humorously described my own limitations as the achiever trying to surrender, surely there is, a way forward for us to progress. And I think your lifetime's work has been dedicated to this. And yeah, I guess that therein stands the question of how do we learn to progress, learn to evolve, given where we are now and where we're going collectively. And I take a lot of heart from the conversation that we're having, and I will let you answer the question. Sorry, just a sec though. But when we get meta and we zoom out a little bit, like you described earlier, it's really reassuring to feel as well that even just looking at things as basic as the coaching industry is growing, and you mentioned like step 6 is the is the strategist, and it's like coaching as an industry is growing, so collectively we are moving into these levels higher and higher, and it's quite inspiring to feel that potentially this whole realm of life evolves into this space where it is finally all unitive. And you're like, what does that even look like? Like, the mind is completely bent out of shape in that space. But nonetheless, we are doing the work, and it is inspiring to feel that even through all the calamities and the challenges, that actually awakening is happening. And in some ways, actually, it even is being televised. So how do you invite us to do the work, to learn, to move into these higher and higher levels? Because also I'm conscious we made light of that meditation can be spiritual bypassing, but it is a fundamental tool. So,
It is.
So the tools that you believe can help and support us there, and how do we work on ourselves?
Well, so meditation can be a tool to bypass other things, but you cannot bypass meditation.
I love that. Thank you for clarifying. That is such a great way to put it.
Just for time, we have time constraints, and I don't want to go too much into detail, but I will say one of the things that we can use is what I call the sacred triangle, which is inner peace, working on inner peace, working on benevolence towards all, including ourselves, and insight, which means seeing things as they are, not as the ego sees them. So inner peace is the base for everything. If you are not at peace with yourself, at peace with others, and at peace with the world, you cannot progress. And how do you achieve that? Well, I would say through meditation, through silence, through forgiveness of self and others, through acceptance, and it doesn't mean acceptance of what you like, it's mostly acceptance of what you don't like, through detachment. You can be, otherwise there will always be something pulling you backwards. And when you work on all those things, also transforming your negative emotions into positive ones, greed, jealousy, anger, everything that comes up as negative, if you transform that into positive ones, kindness, loving, being loving to others, seeing others as part of yourself, not as enemies or competitors or potential threat to your well-being, all those things, you need to work on all those to be able to achieve inner peace. And it's not achieving as something that I get there and that is done. Is living in inner peace means that you have to work on that every single day of your life. Gratitude is another one that will help you be at peace. And then you have the two other vortices of that triangle, which is benevolence. And benevolence means that you will have this attitude of kindness towards all, and you will be compassionate, and you will try to give a hand if you can, and you will see cooperation instead of competition, and you will see that we are all part of the same family, human family, even if they are not my blood family still. So that's an attitude that we need to work on, because otherwise we have a world that we have right now, full of disagreements and arguments and wars and so on. And last but not least, we have to work on the right view. Buddhists call it the right view, and they also call it wisdom. But I think it's more clear to call it insight, because it means that you see rightly. So it means that you see through the eyes of the soul. You see through the eyes of consciousness itself, instead of seeing through the eyes of ego. The ego only sees what you can witness with your eyes, with your five senses. And here we are talking about seeing things from a higher viewpoint, and seeing that even though it seems that we are separated, that's only a filter of our brain to be able to live with the rules of this 3D, but it's not reality. This is not who we are. We are not this body. We are the essence that has chosen to inhabit this body to be able to go through the experiences and learn and progress. I don't know if it makes sense, because it's difficult to
it does, everything. And I'm conscious that each of those is we can do a whole, like meditation can be a whole podcast on itself, gratitude, acceptance, forgive. Each of these is a whole hour-long podcast unto themselves. Detachment, transforming negative emotions into positive. And I think that's a really nice place for me to acknowledge that, and also acknowledge that, it's there's a whole body of your work, like we discussed earlier, that there are 9 books. And 7 Levels of Wisdom is coming out in English, but also you've got a YouTube channel. There's so many resources online for those that want to connect to your work, Monica, online. What's your recommendation of how they do that? And we will put the links in the show notes, as always, guys, below. Yep.
Thank you, Amrit. They have my website, which is monicaesgueva.com, ESGUEVA. And then I have a new YouTube channel in English that I am going to keep uploading some videos to be able to share some teachings and some guidance. And then, of course, my new book that is almost published. It's going to be published just very soon. And it's the 7 Levels of Wisdom, and it will be available worldwide. So I hope that will be a tool to help a lot of people. That's my wish and my innermost desire.
Of course, and what we will do as well is when the book comes out, because the podcast is coming out and you guys are hearing this now, but yeah, if you join the Inspired Evolution mailing list, when the book comes out, we'll send you a link to be able to order the book as well. Yeah, Monica, wow. This conversation, in some ways, it feels like we're just getting started. And in some ways have been so enriching. I always remark, there are these conversations when you feel like, in 3D time, we've been talking for an hour, but also the ground we've covered and the connection we've shared, touch wood, it feels like we've been talking for lifetimes about some really great topics, touch wood. So I obviously want to thank you for your time and your presence and your energy today. And that definitely stands, but as always, it's not just today's conversation, it's all the work that you've shown up for and done in your own life, and all the challenges and all the transcending and all the witnessing and all the space you've held for yourself as well, that we get to stand on the shoulders of the being that has shown up again and again. So just acknowledging you, sister, for all the work that you do in life and what you're doing for others.
That's very kind of you. Thank you, Amrit. Thank you.
Of course. And again, for those that are tuning in, thank you so much for listening all the way through. Like I described earlier, I will put a link to Monica's work in the show notes below. Her YouTube channel, I highly recommend. Please go check out. Not every video is as long as this one. There are some bite-sized, digestible pieces where you can actually take away nuggets and search for things that are really coming up for you in the present moment. And when the book comes out, the link to the book will be there now, so you can pre-order if you want. But when the book comes out, we'll also send out an email to our mailing list, and we'll keep you abreast of everything that's coming up. Monica, thank you so much again. So much love from Australia.
Thank you. Amrit, it has been a real pleasure.
I have to say, and I've been looking into your work and just more, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the work. This is absolutely the work. There is such a deep resonance, and I cannot thank you again for, just enough to, just reach out. And it was, like I said to you before, I was trying to articulate this earlier, but I couldn't. There was like, when you reached out, it wasn't what I was reading that, compelled me. There was the energetics. And similar to what you were describing before with like, oh yeah, I was just sitting with the Dalai Lama and he's talking and I'm not getting any of it, but I'm feeling it. I had the exact same experience when I got your email. Maybe not the exact same experience, but similar frequency.
The universe works in mysterious ways, and when I started the whole thing with the book, and I received the information that I had to write this book, and they said, okay, you have to write it in English. And I was like, what the heck? Do you think Spanish is not difficult enough that I have to do it in English now? And then it's like, how am I going to publish it? I know 0 people in the US, Did you think you're crazy? What are you asking of me? And here we are, So I just knew I had to trust the inner guidance, the higher guidance. I had no idea how this was going to be possible. I thought, who is it going to, I don't know anyone. I have no network there. And then it's like, okay, Monica, just trust. And it's like, okay, I surrender to the higher powers. We'll see what happens. And here we go. I never thought that you will answer so quickly, or, and I was like, for Saturday, I have not prepared anything yet. This is my first interview about the book. What am I going to talk about? It's amazing
to feel, and it's teaching me a lot about trust and surrender. Even your response, the way you were sharing that, it's like, like the embodiment of that trust and that surrender is, wow. Guys, you made it through all the way to the end of another episode of The Inspired Evolution. If this was a conversation that you enjoyed with Monica, and I know I did, this path, this journey of enlightenment, this school of life that we're a part of, here is the next best podcast for you to watch. Hans Wilhelm and I go deep into the conversation about what it is to be alive in the school of life, who we were before we came to the school of life, and some of the soul contracts that we potentially made, touch wood, to be here, and where we're going to go after this life. Check out this conversation with Hans Wilhelm.